My husband, Daniel, passed away a year. Agahis's sudden stroke changed everything in an instant. Our home, once filled with laughter, turned quiet. He wasn't just my husband. He was my partner, my friend, and the glue that held our family together. Every corner of the house reminded me of Feme, and the silence after he was gone felt unbearable. But in that darkness, Somion stepped up. My son Lucas. He was only 24, but he carried himself like Somion, much older. He didn't just grieve, he supported me. He became the one who held me up when I thought I'd fall. Apart Lucas had always been kind, but after Daniel's passing, something shifted. Hemad sure I ate that I rested, that I didn't spend too long alone in the bedroom, staring at old photos. He checked in with me every morning, brought flowers to the table without a word, and Aloha sat close by in the evenings. I could see in his eyes that he missed his father deeply, but he turned his pain into strength. He made it his mission to make sure I wouldn't collapse under it of mine. This morning, something next happened. Lucas came into the kitchen with a mischievous smile, hiding something behind his back. "Good morning, Ma," he said, kissing me gently on the cheek. "I've got something for you." I raised my eyebrow, curious as surprise. He took my hand and led me outside. The sunlight was golden across the driveway, and there it was, a silver convertible, one I had admired 4 years, parked right in front of our house. I gasped. "Lucas, what is this?" "It's yours," he said simply. "You've always done everything for me. I wanted to do something for you." I was speechless, my throat tightened. "Butho?" I asked. Lucas looked a little shy then. "I've been saving, and I know this doesn't fix anything, but I thought it might make you smile again. You deserve it." That, Emma. Tears welled up in my eyes. I wrapped my arms around him. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice shaking. "This means more than you'll ever know." That evening we drove the car with the top down, letting the wind dance in our hair. The sky was a canvas of orange and pink. Laughed. I hadn't laughed like that in months. It wasn't just a car, it was a reminder that life still had beauty. Even after loss that night, I remembered how it felt to be alive. As we pulled back into the driveway, Lucas looked at me with quiet seriousness. "Emma," he said, "no, I can't bring Dad back, but I'll be here. You're not alone." And who was right in that eminent? I didn't feel alone. I felt held, not just by my son's gesture, but by his heart. So time shilling doesn't come all at once. It comes in small, beautiful emotes, like a drive at sunset with someone who still believes in love, even after everything. He wasn't even ready for the day when Lucas showed up in the kitchen, already wearing an apron and flipping pancakes. He glanced over his shoulder, winked at me, and placed a plate of golden fluffy pancakes in front of me. "You didn't have Edo do this," I said, surprised. "I thought you could use a break from cooking." He replied with a warm smile, "You're spoiling me." I chuckled softly. "You deserve to be cared for," he said, gently. "You've always taken care of me. Just this once, let me do something for you." But it wasn't just breakfast. Lucas always found ways to make life a little easier for me. When I told him I couldn't bring myself to go up to the attic, where so many of Daniel's things were, he didn't push mine. Instead, he went up alone quietly, so out, making sure that when I was ready, it would be a little less overwhelming. One rainy afternoon, I saw him placing fresh flowers in a vase in the living room. I paused in the doorway, watching him. "Flowers, what's the occasione?" asked. He looked up and smiled. "No occasion, I just thought the house could use some color, and I know you love." Liesi stood there, my heart tightening. "Danielis to bring me flowers to just Becco's. You remembered," I said softly. "It treed to." Lucas replied with his familiar, but it wasn't just the big gesture. Lucas noticed everything when he saw Malostin, thought staring out the window too long. He'd bring me a cup of tea and sit beside me in silence. When I sighed about work being too much, he'd offer to help or gently insist I rest. "You don't have to do everything alone, Emma." He would say, "I'm here," and he truly was there. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in soft orange light, we sat on the porch together without prompting. Lucas turned me with a thoughtful look. "You know, Emma," he said, "you're amazing. Where does all that strength come from?" I smiled at him, surprised by the question. "Why do you say that?" "Because it's the truth." He shrugged. "You've stayed strong through everything. I don't know how you do it." I looked away, then feeling my throat tighten. "I'm not as strong as you think," I admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I'm barely holding it together." Lucas reached out and placed his hand gently on mine. "You don't have Edo. Hold it together all by yourself," he said softly. "That's what family is." For his words touched something deep inside him. I squeezed his hand in return. In Thadam, just a grieving widow or a mother trying to stay composed. I felt Sin understood, and most of all, not Alan Alokas, and I always found ways to make ordinary audience special. One weekend I decided to cook together. We improvised with ingredients just to make it fun. And in the end, our souffle collapsed in the most dramatic way. Lucas turned to me with a playful pout and said we might not win any prizes, but at least we've got a good story to tell. Then he kept the jokes coming, ones that made me laugh so hard my sides hurt. It was a kind of laughter I hadn't experienced in a long time, not since Daniel passed. Lucas had a way of giving that genuinely surprised Methy, weren't forced, they made me feel seen, valued. It had been a long time since anyone made me feel that way. That evening, I was getting ready for dinner with an old friend and decided to wear a dress I hadn't touched in years. When Lucas saw me, he stopped for a moment and said, "Wow, Emma, you look really nice." He blushed, brushing it off. "It's just an old dress," but he shook his head. "It doesn't matter. You look lovely." That simple mark stayed with me the whole night. It gave me a quiet confidence I didn't know I needed. Lucas didn't just say nice things, he walked with me on my path to healing. One weekend, he planned a surprise trip to a nearby vineyard, walked through rows of vines, tasting different blends of wine, and laughing at terrible attempts to describe the flavors like real critics. "You've got a great palate," he joked. "Maybe we found your new career." I laughed and teased, "Don't quit your day job, wine critic." Those small adventures did something big for me. I didn't realize how healing they were until I noticed how much lighter I felt afterward, even with sadness still in my heart. Emience like those reminded that joy was possible, not because Thepin disappeared, but because love remained. Lucas's presence reminded me that life still had warmth, laughter, and meaning. Little by little, I felt fluid of grief. Softened happiness didn't replace the loss, but it started to grow alongside it, like light breaking through cracks in a wall. That night, a storm rolled and rain pounded the roof and Thuand held outside. I was finishing the dishes when the lights flickered twice, then went out completely. "Lucas," I called, my voice breaking the silence. "I'm here." He answered from the living room. Just hearing his voice made me feel safe. Emience later, he appeared in theaterway holding a flashlight, the beam casting soft light across the kitchen. "Looks like the storm knocked out Thepower," he said with a smile. I dried my hands and chuckled. "Well, this feels..." Lucas nodded. "It reminds me of those winter nights when the power went out. Do you remember?" "Of course, Edo," I said with a smile. "You always begged me to play games to pass that time." "Exactly." He grinned. "So why not now?" The storm outside was getting louder, rain tapping hard against the windows. "Just for fun, Lucas and I decided to play a game of hide and seek, something hadn't done in years." He laughed and started counting down from 10. I grabbed a flashlight and dashed into the dark hallway. Heart racing with excitement, I crouched behind the couch in the den, trying to control my giggles. The shadows cast by the storm made the house feel unfamiliar, almost magical. "I'm coming whether you're ready or not," Lucas called out, his voice echoing playful. "Ifra." The house, I couldn't help but laugh quietly. It all felt silly, but in the best way I could hear Lucas's slow, deliberate steps, drawing closer like he was enjoying every element of the hunt. "If you want to stay hidden, Emma, you've got to try harder," he joked. His shadow passed by the doorway. I held my breath, covering my mouth to keep from laughing. Just when I thought he'd passed, he suddenly turned back, shining his flashlight into the room. "Found you," he said with a triumphant grin. I laughed and stood up. "Oh, you're too good at this, years of practice," he replied smugly. "Now it's your turn." We switched roles and I spent several minutes searching for him. Lucas was fast, far more agile than I expected. Every time I thought I was close, he'd slip away again. I finally found him in the guest bedroom. I opened the closet door, and there he was, hunched in the corner, grinning like a kid. "Whoa, got caught with his hand in the cookie jar." "Caught to you," I said between gasps of laughter. Okay. He laughed, standing up and raising his hands in surrender. Later, we both collapsed onto the living room couch. The storm was still raging outside, but inside the sound of our laughter filled the quiet house. It felt like we had been transported back to simpler times when the only thing that mattered was being together. I shook my head, smiling. "You're too good at this, but next time, I'm winning." He chuckled, then his face softened as he turned toward me with that warm smile I'd come to cherish. "I'm glad we did this," he said. "It's nice to feel like yourself again." I nodded. "It really is." With the power still out, why's it the time to talk? Telling stories, sharing memories. Lucas leaned back on the couch, watching me as I told him a story about when he was little and go tinto mischief. I nudged his arm. "Playful, you were such a handful back then," Haladen said. "You were the Emma, I have no idea how you handled it all." His voice was soft and full of love. I looked at him, and Smility didn't always know what I was doing. I just did my best, and somehow we made it through that evening. No lights, no distractions, just the storm. And our third stories became one of those remembrance that stays with you even through grief, even in silence. The love between us filled the room, and in that warm, flickering quiet, I realized that sometimes healing doesn't come from doing something big. It comes from remembering who you are and who you've always had by your side. The storm outside had started to calm the rain. Was no, just a soft patter against the windows, and the power still hadn't come back on. Lucas helped me light some candles, and their warm glow filled their room with a soft golden light. It made everything feel peaceful, quiet in a way both needed. We sat together on the couch talking and laughing until the early hours of the morning. For the first time in a long time I felt truly at peace. His steady presence reminded me that, even in the darkest moments, there is still light, sometimes in the form of Simeon, simply sitting beside you. That night, I couldn't help but think of Butho, close Lucas, and I had become not just as mother and son but as two people who had been through something difficult together, and were now finding peace in the quiet. The flickering candle light cast long shadows across the walls. The atmosphere felt calm, nostalgic, almost like an emanant from another time. Lucas reached for the remote and smiled. Let's watch a movie, something easy. I think we've had enough excitement for one night. I nodded with a laugh, agreed. Maybe something romantic. Something lighthearted. He raised an eyebrow, surprised. You still like love stories? Of course, I teased. Doesn't mean I want to start dating again. After flipping through a few options, Lucas picked an old romantic film, one I hadn't watched it in years, but always loved. As it started, leaned back into the couch and let soft sound of the rain mix with the upon music of the movie. There was something comforting about it, not just film, but the eminent, the flickering candles, the storm outside, and the rare stillness between us. Lucas had always liked sitting close when he was little, especially during storms. It reminded me of those nights when he'd sneak into my bed just to feel safe. That closeness now wasn't unusual, it was familiar, a quiet kind of comfort. Halfway through the movie, Lucas offered a gentle side hug like he used to do when he was younger. Is this okay? He asked softly. I smiled. Of course, it's nice to feel connected. Dagon. We continued watching, letting the story unfold. As it ended, we sat in silence for a few ambience before the viewer flickered back on, then off again. Decided not to move. It felt better, toasty in the glow of the candles, lost in simplicity of just being there. Westard, telling stories from the past. I reminded Lucas of the time he got into trouble for drawing on the walls when he was 4. I nudged him playfully. You were a little troublemaker, you know. Lucas lied and leaned back. You were the most patient, Emma. I have no idea how you handled all of that. His voice was filled with love, and I felt the honesty in it. I looked at him and said, I didn't always know what I was doing. I just loved you and tried my best. That night became my own. Of those you carry with you, not because anything dramatic happened, but because everything was simple, true, and well, even with the storm still whispering outside. Inside there was calm, a kind of healing that didn't need grand gestures, just time, presence, and the quiet bond between a parent and their child. As I began to speak, Lucas gently stopped me. You don't have to he said, his voice low but steady. I just want you to know that I want to be here for you, because you've always been there for me. I tried to respond, but words failed me. So I leaned my head gently on his shoulder. It was a quiet gesture, but it said everything. I couldn't find the courage to speak aloud. We no longer paid attention to the movie played in the background, forgotten the amount itself. Simple silence, safe, was all that mattered. I closed my eyes for a second and let stillness wrap around us like a blanket. There was comfort in knowing Simeon was beside me, not out of obligation but from care. As the credits rolled, Lucas shifted slightly and turned toward me. Thank you for tonight, Hesed. I don't remember the last time I felt this happy. Me neither, I replied, meeting his eyes. You've helped more than you know. I don't think I'll ever be able to put it into words. You didn't have to. He smiled. Just seeing you smile again is enough. The storm had passed outside. The rain had softened into a calm drizzle. Inside, everything was quiet, the candles flickering faintly as they began to burn lower. Lucas placed his hand gently over mine. His voice broke the silence. Emma, I don't know where I'd be without you. Tears came to my eyes, not out of sadness but from the wit of being truly seen. I gave Hishind a reassuring squeeze. And I'm the lucky one to have you. There was no need to explain further in that. Gratitude spoke louder than words. We didn't say Mac. After that, just being there side by side on the couch, with the quiet hum off rain in the distance, was enough. It reminded me that love isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's found in a glance, a shared laugh, a hand held through the dark. Lucas looked over at me and smiled again, his expression peaceful. Tonight was good, he said softly. Yes. I nodded. It reminded me who, where, and how far we've come. Eventually, candles flickered out one by one, leaving us in a gentle, shadowy stillness, but the warmth between us stayed. We sat together and shared old stories, laughing at childhood memories, poking fun at each other, and holding on to the feeling of connection. Before the night ended, Lucas looked at me and said, You've always been my safe place, Emma, and you've become mine. I replied, smiling through quiet tears that night. I realized something: love doesn't need to be perfect, just needs to be real, and in thought room with the storm behind us and healing ahead, I finally felt whole.